The rain stung my face as I stumbled out the front door. My stepfather's voice still roaring in my ears. "You're no son of mine." His words sliced through me sharper than the November wind whipping down the street in our small Ohio town. At 18, I was homeless, clutching a duffel bag with everything I owned. All because I dared to tell the truth about who I am. My name is Eli Carter, and I'd known I was gay since I was 13. When I first noticed how my heart raced around my best friend, Jamal. I'd hidden it for years, terrified of what my stepfather, Rick, would do. He was a man of hard-edged ex-military, quick to anger, and fiercely traditional. My mom, soft-spoken and always trying to keep the peace, couldn't protect me when he found my journal, its pages filled with my unspoken feelings for Jamal. That night, Rick's rage erupted, and by morning, I was on the street. I wandered aimlessly, the weight of rejection pressing down on me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. "Jamal. Eli, where are you?" His voice was urgent, steady, the only anchor I had left. I told him everything, my words breaking as I stood under a flickering street lamp. "Stay there," he said. "I'm coming." Jamal arrived 20 minutes later, his old pickup truck rattling to a stop. He was taller than me, with deep brown skin and eyes that always seemed to see right through my walls. At 18, he carried himself with a quiet confidence, like he'd already faced the world's judgment and come out stronger. "You're not alone in this," he said, pulling me into a hug that felt like safety. I wanted to believe him, but the ache in my chest screamed otherwise. We drove to his aunt's house, a small, cluttered place on the edge of town. Aunt Clara, a wiry woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense demeanor, took one look at me and said, "You're staying here, kid." No arguments. Her kindness was a lifeline, but I couldn't shake the fear that I was a burden. Jamal sat with me on the sagging couch, his hand brushing mine, and for the first time that night, I felt a flicker of hope. But hope was fragile. The next day, word spread fast in our small town. By noon, whispers followed me at the gas station where I worked part-time. "That's the kid Rick threw out," someone muttered. My boss, a gruff man named Hank, pulled me aside. "Eli, I don't care who you love, but customers are talking. Keep your head down." "All right." I nodded, but the shame burned. School was worse. I was a senior, just months from graduation, but the hallways felt like a gauntlet. My locker was defaced with slurs by lunch, and a group of guys from the football team cornered me after class. "Freak," one spat, shoving me against the wall. I didn't fight back. I was too tired, too broken. But then Jamal appeared, his voice low and dangerous. "Back off, or we've got a problem." They scattered, but the damage was done. I felt like I was drowning, and Jamal couldn't always be there to pull me out. That night, lying on a cot in Clara's spare room, I stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment that led me here. I thought of my mom, her silence when Rick screamed at me. I thought of Jamal, who'd risked his own reputation to stand by me. And I thought of myself scared, angry, but still alive. I didn't know how to keep going, but something in me refused to give up. The next morning, Clara handed me a cup of coffee and a flyer for a local LGBTQ youth group. "You're not the only one who's been through this," she said. "Go. Talk to people who get it." I hesitated, but Jamal nudged me. "I'll go with you," he promised. His support was the only thing keeping me grounded, but I couldn't ignore the tension growing between us, something unspoken, something more than friendship. The youth group met in a community center downtown, a squat brick building with faded posters on the walls. Inside, a dozen kids, most around my age, sat in a circle. The facilitator, a trans woman named Marissa, had a warm smile and a voice that put me at ease. "We're here to listen," she said. "No judgment." I didn't speak much that first meeting, but hearing other stories, kids who'd been rejected, bullied, or worse, made me feel less alone. One girl, Sophie, shared how her parents disowned her, yet she'd found a chosen family. Her strength stuck with me. Jamal sat beside me, his knee brushing mine, and I caught myself staring at him. He'd always been my best friend, but now, every touch, every glance, felt electric. I wanted to tell him how I felt, but fear held me back. What if I ruined everything? What if he didn't feel the same? Still, his presence was a quiet promise that I wasn't facing this alone. As we left the meeting, Marissa pulled me aside. "You've got fire in you, Eli," she said. "Don't let anyone dim it." Her words lingered as Jamal and I walked back to his truck. The stars were bright above, and for a moment, the world didn't feel so heavy. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. My stepfather's rejection was a wound that wouldn't heal overnight, and the town's judgment wasn't going away. Yet, with Jamal by my side and a spark of defiance in my chest, I felt ready to fight for my place in the world. The days blurred into weeks, and Clara's house became my refuge. Her cooking filled the air with warm spaghetti one night, fried chicken the next, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was an intruder. Jamal noticed my unease. "Your family now?" he said one evening, tossing me a soda as we sat on the porch. His words were kind, but I wondered if he meant them the way I wanted to hear them. School remained a battlefield. The slurs on my locker didn't stop, and whispers followed me like shadows. I kept my head down, focusing on my grades to secure a scholarship me ticket out of this town. Jamal was my shield, but even he couldn't stop the rumors. One day, a teacher overheard a cruel comment and did nothing, her silence louder than the insult. It stung, but I refused to let it break me. The youth group became my lifeline. Every Wednesday, I sat in that circle, listening to stories of resilience. Sophie, the girl who'd lost her family, became a friend. She was 17, with short purple hair and a laugh that defied her pain. "You'll find your people," she told me one night over pizza. Blood doesn't always mean family. Her words echoed Clara's kindness, and I started to believe them. Jamal came to every meeting, his presence steady but complicated. I caught him watching me sometimes, his gaze lingering longer than it used to. One night, as we walked home under a sky streaked with pink, I almost told him how I felt. The words were on my tongue: "I love you. I've always loved you," but fear choked them back. What if he didn't feel the same? What if I lost him too? Then came the call from my mom. I hadn't heard from her since the night Rick threw me out. Her voice was small, trembling. "Eli, I'm sorry," she said. I didn't know how to stop him. She wanted to meet, to talk, but Rick was still in the picture, and I wasn't ready to face him. I hung up, my chest tight with anger and longing. Jamal found me sitting on the curb, head in my hands. "She's your mom," he said softly. "She's trying." But I wasn't sure I could forgive her yet. The next day, trouble found us. A group of guys from school, led by a senior named Kyle, cornered us behind the gym. Kyle was Rick's buddy's son, and his smirk told me this wasn't random. "Your stepdad says you're a disgrace," he taunted, shoving me. Jamal stepped in, fists clenched, but I grabbed his arm. "Don't," I whispered. Fighting would only make things worse. Kyle laughed, tossing a slushie at me, the red ice soaking my shirt. Humiliation burned, but Jamal's hand on my shoulder kept me grounded. That night, Clara sat us down. "You boys need a plan," she said, her eyes sharp. "This town's too small for big hearts like yours." She suggested I look into a youth shelter in Columbus, a bigger city with more resources. The idea scared me, leaving everything I knew, but it also sparked something. Maybe I could start over. Maybe I could be free. Jamal and I researched the shelter online. It offered counseling, job training, even college prep for kids like me. But the thought of leaving Jamal behind twisted my gut. You could come too, I said, half joking. His smile was sad. I've got my aunt, my life here. But I'll visit. Promise. His words were a comfort, but they didn't ease the ache of what I couldn't say. The youth group organized a fundraiser talent show to raise money for the shelter. I wasn't much of a performer, but Sophie convinced me to read a poem I'd written in my journal. It was about loss, love, and finding yourself in the wreckage. Standing on that stage, my voice shaking, I poured out my heart. The applause was quiet at first, then thunderous. Jamal's eyes shone with pride, and for a moment, I felt invincible. But reality crashed back the next day. Rick showed up at Clara's, banging on the door. Eli, get out here. He bellowed. My heart pounded as I faced him. Clara and Jamal flanking me. You're tearing this family apart. Rick spat. I wanted to scream that he'd done that. Not me. Instead, I said, I'm not your family anymore. His face twisted, but he left without another word. Clara hugged me, and Jamal's hand found mine, squeezing tight. In that moment, I knew I was stronger than I'd thought. The confrontation with Rick left me rattled, but it also lit a fire in me. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was fighting to build a life that was mine. Clara's house felt more like home every day, her blunt wisdom and endless coffee grounding me. But the pull to leave for Columbus grew stronger. The shelter's website promised a fresh start, and I craved that more than anything. Jamal and I spent hours planning. He'd found a part-time job at a garage, saving up for a car that could take us to visit each other. You're not getting rid of me, he teased, nudging my shoulder. His touch sent my heart racing, and I wondered if he felt it too. I wanted to ask, but the risk was too great. Instead, I focused on the practical packing, applying for aid, preparing for the move. School was still a minefield. Kyle and his crew hadn't let up, but I'd learned to dodge them. My grades stayed solid, and my guidance counselor, Ms. Rivera, became an unexpected ally. She was young, maybe 30, with a sharp mind and a knack for seeing through my defenses. You're resilient, Eli, she said one day. But don't let pride keep you from asking for help. She connected me with a scholarship program for marginalized youth, and I spent nights writing essays about my journey. The youth group was my sanctuary. Marissa, the facilitator, invited me to co-lead a session, and I found myself mentoring younger kids. One boy, Caleb, was 15 and terrified of coming out. What if my parents hate me? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. I shared my story, not sugarcoating the pain, but emphasizing the hope. You'll find people who love you for you, I told him. Jamal watched from the back, his smile soft, and I felt a surge of purpose. My mom called again, her voice steadier this time. I'm leaving Rick, she said. The words hit like a shockwave. She'd found a place in Dayton, a small apartment, and wanted me to visit. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I agreed to meet her. Jamal drove me, his quiet presence calming my nerves. At a diner halfway between our town and Dayton, Mom hugged me, tears in her eyes. I failed you, she said. I didn't disagree, but I let her talk. She was trying, and that was a start. The talent show had raised enough to fund my move to Columbus. Sophie and I practiced our acts together, she sang, her voice raw and haunting, while I refined my poem. The night of the show, the community center was packed. I spotted Ms. Rivera, Clara, and even Hank from the gas station in the crowd. My poem poured out, every word a piece of my soul. When I finished, Jamal was the first to stand, clapping fiercely. Our eyes locked, and I knew I couldn't keep my feelings buried much longer. But trouble wasn't done with me. Kyle and his friends crashed the after-party, drunk and loud. "This is a freak show," Kyle slurred, shoving Sophie. Jamal and I stepped in, and things escalated fast. A punch grazed my jaw before Clara and Marissa broke it up. Kyle's crew left, but the night was tainted. Sophie was shaken, and I felt responsible. "This isn't your fault," Jamal said later, cleaning a cut on my lip. His fingers lingered, and I almost leaned in, but fear stopped me again. The next day, I got a letter from the scholarship program full ride to a community college in Columbus. It was a lifeline, but it meant leaving sooner than I'd planned. Jamal helped me pack, his silence heavy. "You're going to do big things," he said, but his eyes were sad. I wanted to tell him I loved him, that I wanted him with me, but the words stayed locked inside. As my last week in town began, I felt torn between fear and excitement. Columbus was a chance to start over, but it meant leaving Jamal, Clara, and the youth group, the people who'd saved me. I didn't know if I was ready, but I knew I had to try. That night, lying awake, I made a promise to myself. I'd tell Jamal how I felt before I left, no matter the cost. The countdown to Columbus was on, and every day felt like a tightrope walk between hope and dread. Clara's house buzzed with preparations, laundry, packing, endless lists, but my mind was on Jamal. I caught him staring at me more often, his expression unreadable. Was it just friendship, or something more? The question gnawed at me, but I couldn't find the courage to ask. School was a blur of finals and farewells. Ms. Rivera helped me finalize my scholarship paperwork, her pride evident. "You're going to shine, Eli," she said, handing me a card signed by the faculty. Even Hank slipped me an envelope with $50 and a gruff, "Don't screw this up, kid." Their support was a balm, but the town's hostility lingered. A note in my locker read, "Good riddance, fag." I tore it up, but it still stung. The youth group threw me a going-away party. Sophie gave me a beaded bracelet she'd made, her eyes misty. "Don't forget us," she said. Caleb, the shy kid, hugged me, whispering, "Thanks for giving me hope." Marissa pulled me aside, her voice firm. "You're not just surviving, Eli. You're building something new. Own it." Her words fueled me, but the thought of leaving Jamal made my chest ache. That night, Jamal and I sat on Clara's porch, the air thick with summer humidity. "You nervous?" he asked, his voice low. I nodded, staring at the stars. "I don't know how to do this without you," I admitted. He turned to me, his eyes intense. "You're stronger than you think. But I'm not going anywhere, Eli." "Not really." His hand brushed mine, and my heart pounded. I opened my mouth to confess, but headlights cut through the dark Rick's truck. He stepped out, his face a storm of anger and regret. "Your mom's gone," he said. "Left me. Said it's because of you." My stomach dropped. I didn't know whether to feel guilty or relieved. "You happy now?" He spat. Jamal stood, his body tense, but I faced Rick alone. "I'm done letting you define me," I said, my voice steady. He stared, then got back in his truck and drove off. I was shaking, but I felt free. The next day, Mom called to confirm she'd settled in Dayton. "Come visit when you're ready," she said. I wasn't there yet, but her effort meant something. Jamal drove me to the bus station for my move, his silence heavier than ever. As we waited, I couldn't hold back anymore. "Jamal, I love you," I blurted, my face burning. "Not just as a friend. I've loved you for years." He froze, his eyes wide. For a moment, I thought I'd ruined everything. Then he smiled, soft and real. "I love you too, Eli. I was just waiting for you to say it." He pulled me into a kiss, gentle but electric, and the world fell away. When we parted, he laughed. You think I'd let you go to Columbus without me figuring this out? We made a plan he'd visit every weekend, and we'd make it work, no matter the distance. The bus pulled up, and I hugged him tightly, tears in my eyes. This isn't goodbye, he whispered. I boarded, my heart full, knowing I was carrying his love with me. In Columbus, the shelter was a modest building with warm staff and kids like meat casts finding their way. My roommate, Alex, was a non-binary 19-year-old with a quick wit and a love for comics. They showed me the ropes, and I felt a spark of belonging. But Jamal was never far from my thoughts. His first visit was a week later, and seeing him step off the bus felt like coming home. Columbus was a new world. The city hummed with life buses rumbling, street vendors calling, people moving with purpose. The shelter was my anchor, its staff guiding me through paperwork and counseling. Alex, my roommate, became a fast friend, their humor cutting through my nerves. You're gonna own this city, they said, tossing me a comic book. I wasn't so sure, but I was determined to try. College started a week later. A community campus with crowded halls and professors who didn't know my past. I dove into my classes: English, sociology, a creative writing course that felt like breathing. My scholarship covered tuition, and the shelter provided meals. But I picked up a job at a coffee shop to save for the future. The work was grueling, but every tip felt like a step toward independence. Jamal's visits were the highlight of my weeks. He'd take the bus from our town, his smile lighting up the station. We'd explore Columbus parks, diners, a queer bookstore where I felt seen. Our relationship was new, tentative, but every kiss felt like a promise. Long distance sucks, he said one night, lying beside me on my narrow shelter bed. But you're worth it. I believed him, but the distance was a quiet ache. Back in our town, things were shifting. Clara called to say Kyle had been suspended for vandalism. Locker wasn't his only target. Sophie was thriving, leading the youth group with Marissa. Even my mom reached out, sending a care package with cookies and a letter. I'm proud of you, she wrote. I cried reading it, torn between forgiveness and the pain of her silence when I'd needed her most. One night, I got a call from Caleb, the kid from the youth group. He was sobbing his parents had found out he was gay and locked him out. I don't know what to do, he said. I told him to get to Clara's, and I called her to make sure he was safe. The next day, I took a bus back to help. Seeing Caleb, small and scared, was like looking at myself 6 months ago. You're not alone, I told him, echoing Jamal's words to me. We got him into the youth group, and Clara offered her couch until we could contact the shelter. Being back in town was surreal. The streets felt smaller, the judgment heavier. I ran into MS Rivera, who hugged me fiercely. You're doing it, Eli, she said. You're living. Her words carried me through the visit, but facing my old life stirred up ghosts. I avoided my old house, but Rick's presence lingered like a bruise. Jamal and I stole moments together, walking the old paths we used to roam as friends. I'm proud of you, he said, his hand in mine. But I miss you. I missed him too, more than I could say. We talked about the future. Maybe he'd move to Columbus after graduation. The possibility kept me going. Back in Columbus, I threw myself into my writing. My professor, Dr. Ellis, praised my poems, saying they had raw truth. I started a blog, posting about my journey as a queer kid from a small town. To my surprise, it gained traction. Comments from strangers who'd been through similar pain. One reader, a trans teen named Riley, emailed me, saying my words gave them hope. I realized my story wasn't just mine. Anna Maria, it was a beacon for others. But challenges followed me. The coffee shop cut my hours, and money got tight. The shelter had a curfew, and some nights, I felt trapped. I called Jamal, my voice breaking. I don't know if I'm strong enough, I admitted. He was quiet, then said, "You're the strongest person I know. And I'm here. Always." His words pulled me back from the edge. Life in Columbus settled into a rhythm, but it wasn't easy. The shelter's rules were strict, and the coffee shop job barely covered my phone bill. Still, I found joy in small things: late night talks with Alex, acing a sociology paper, Jamal's weekend visits. My blog grew, connecting me with a community I'd never known existed. Riley, the trans teen, became a regular commenter, their messages full of courage and questions. Helping them felt like paying forward the support I'd received. College pushed me to grow. Dr. Ellis encouraged me to submit my poems to a literary magazine. "Your voice matters," she said. I hesitated. Exposing my pain to strangers felt risky, but I sent in 3 pieces. A month later, I got an acceptance email. Seeing my words in print, raw and real, was surreal. I sent a copy to Jamal, who called me, his voice beaming. "You're a writer, Eli. A real one." Jamal's visits were my lifeline, but the distance strained us. One weekend, he seemed off, quieter than usual. "What's wrong?" I asked, sitting on a park bench. He sighed, running a hand over his face. "My aunt's sick, Eli. Cancer. I can't leave her." My heart sank. Clara was his rock, just like he was mine. "We'll figure it out," I said, but the words felt hollow. I couldn't ask him to choose between me and his family. Back at the shelter, Alex noticed my mood. "Love's messy," they said, tossing me a candy bar. "But you too. You've got something real." Their words helped, but doubt crept in. What if Jamal stayed in our town forever? What if I lost him to the miles between us? Then came a surprise. Mom showed up in Columbus. She'd driven 2 hours, her face nervous but determined. We met at a cafe, and she slid a photo across the table as a kid, smiling with her at a fair. "I keep this with me," she said. "I'm trying to be better, Eli." She told me she'd left Rick for good and was taking classes to become a nurse. I saw the mom I'd loved before Rick, but trust was a slow rebuild. Still, I hugged her, and it felt like a step. The youth group back home reached out, asking me to speak at their annual gala. I hesitated. Returning meant facing old wounds, but Marissa's voice on the phone was firm. "Your story can change lives, Eli." I agreed, and Jamal promised to be there. The gala was in a month, giving me time to prepare. I wrote a speech about resilience, weaving in my journey from rejection to hope. But life threw another curveball. The shelter's funding was cut, and they could only house me for another month. Panic set in. Couldn't afford an apartment yet. Alex and I brainstormed, applying for subsidized housing, but the wait lists were long. I didn't tell Jamal right away. I didn't want to burden him with Clara's illness weighing on him. My blog became my outlet. I wrote about the shelter, my fears, my love for Jamal. The post went viral, shared by a queer advocacy group. Donations poured in for the shelter, and a local organization offered me a part-time job writing for their newsletter. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Riley emailed again, saying they'd come out to their parents because of my words. They didn't kick me out. They wrote, "Thank you." I cried, feeling the weight of my impact. The gala loomed, and I practiced my speech until my voice was hoarse. Jamal sent texts of encouragement, but his absence during the week hurt. I missed his laugh, his steady hand in mine. Still, I knew he was doing what he had to for Clara. I had to do this for myself and for kids like Caleb and Riley, who needed to see someone make it through. The gala was a whirlwind of nerves and hope. The community center was transformed: string lights, tables draped in rainbow flags, a crowd of allies and queer youth. I wore a borrowed blazer, feeling out of place but determined. Marissa introduced me, her voice warm with pride. Eli Carter's story is one of courage, she said. My heart pounded as I took the stage. I spoke about the night Rick threw me out, the pain of rejection, and the family I'd found in Clara, Jamal, and the youth group. I talked about Columbus, my blog, and the kids like Caleb and Riley who gave me purpose. We're not defined by who rejects us, I said, my voice steady. We're defined by who we choose to become. The applause was deafening, and I saw Jamal in the back, his eyes shining. He'd made it. After, we stole a moment outside. You were incredible, he said, pulling me close. I kissed him, the world fading away. But his face was strained. Clara's getting worse, he admitted. I might need to stay longer. My heart sank, but I nodded. We'll make it work, I said, echoing his words from months ago. Love wasn't easy, but it was worth fighting for. Back in Columbus, the shelter's deadline loomed. The newsletter job helped, but rent was still out of reach. Alex and I scoured options, finding a shared apartment with 2 other queer kids. It was cramped, but it was ours. Moving day was chaotic boxes, laughter, Alex blasting music. For the first time, I felt like I was building a home. My blog kept growing, and I started a podcast with Sophie, who'd moved to Columbus for college. We interviewed queer youth, sharing their stories. Caleb was our first guest, his voice stronger now. You showed me I could survive, he said. I thought of Jamal, Clara, Marissa, all the people who'd shown me the same. Mom visited again, bringing homemade lasagna. We talked for hours, rebuilding what we'd lost. I'm proud of you, she said, and this time, I believed her. I told her about Jamal, and she smiled. He sounds like a keeper. I hope she was right. Jamal's visits grew sporadic as Clara's condition worsened. He called one night, his voice breaking. She's in hospice, he said. I took a bus to see him, staying by his side as he grieved. Clara was weak but still sharp, squeezing my hand. Take care of my boy, she whispered. I promised I would. When Clara passed, Jamal was shattered. I stayed for the funeral, holding him as he cried. The town felt suffocating, but being there for him was all that mattered. We talked about the future, him moving to Columbus, us building a life together. It was a dream, fragile but real. Back in Columbus, I threw myself into work and school. The podcast gained traction, and a local newspaper featured me as a voice for queer youth. It was surreal, seeing my name in print again. But every step forward came with a pull backward. Money was tight, and Jamal's grief kept him distant. I wondered if we could survive the strain. One night, I found a letter from Clara, tucked in a book she'd given me. Eli, you're a light, she'd written. Don't let the world dim you. Her words reignited my fire. I called Jamal, telling him about the apartment, the podcast, my dreams. I want you in this life, I said. He was quiet, then said, I'm coming to Columbus. For good. Jamal moved to Columbus 3 months later, after settling Clara's affairs. He found a job at a garage and moved into my apartment, our lives tangling together in the best way. Mornings were coffee and stolen kisses. Nights were talks about our future. It wasn't perfect, money was tight, and we argued sometimes, but love held us together. The podcast became a beacon, reaching queer kids across the country. Sophie and I interviewed Marissa, who'd expanded the youth group back home. Caleb was thriving, planning to join us in Columbus for college. My blog evolved into a book, a memoir about my journey. Writing it was painful, but every word felt like healing. Mom became a regular part of my life, visiting monthly. She'd met someone new, a kind woman who made her laugh. I'm learning, she said one day, hugging me. I forgave her, not all at once. but enough to move forward. Rick was a shadow, irrelevant now. I'd outgrown his hate. One evening, Jamal and I walked through a park, the city lights sparkling. He stopped, pulling me close. "I want this forever," he said, his voice steady. "You and me." I kissed him, tears in my eyes. "Forever," I promised. We weren't just surviving any more way, we're building something unbreakable. My memoir was published a year later, dedicated to Clara, Jamal, and every kid who'd ever felt rejected. At the launch, I looked out at the crowd: Jamal, Mom, Sophie, Alex, Caleb, Marissa, and saw my chosen family. I read a passage about the night I was kicked out, how it broke me but led me here. Pain doesn't define us, I said. Love does. The book resonated, sparking conversations online and in community centers. Letters poured in from kids like Riley, saying my story gave them courage. I realized my purpose wasn't just to survive, it was to light the way for others. Jamal and I started a scholarship fund with the book's proceeds, helping queer youth access college. Life wasn't without struggles. The city was expensive, and Jamal's grief for Clara lingered. But we faced it together, leaning on each other and our community. One night, under the same stars we'd watched back home, Jamal proposed. It was simply ring he'd saved for, words from his heart. "Yes," I said, laughing through tears. Our wedding was small, in a park with our chosen family. Sophie sang, Alex officiated, and Mom cried harder than anyone. As we danced, Jamal whispered, "We made it." And we had. From a rainy night on the street to this moment, we'd built a life defined by love, resilience, and hope. Looking back, I saw how every pain, Rick's rejection, the town's cruelty, the uncertainty had shaped me. It wasn't the pain that mattered, but what I did with it. I'd found my voice, my love, my purpose. And as I held Jamal's hand, I knew the best was yet to come.